Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Thank you for joining us here today. We're going to be addressed by the Commissioner himself, Mr. Stephen Corbishley, with regard to some ongoing police matters. And following him, we will hear from Chief Inspector Mr. Robert Cardwell, who heads up the BPS Tactical Unit, on the recent concerns expressed on social media with regard to the stolen bike issue. Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you, Gary. Good afternoon, members of the media. I just want to start off with an expression of condolence to the Bridges family, who tragically lost their daughter, Amber, who was only 16 years old, over the weekend. I think the reaction from the community, from different parts, not least parents who have children, has been one of shock, sadness, and obviously are truly sorry for what the family are going through at this very, very difficult time. The Bermuda Police Service continue to support the Bridges family, and obviously our role, apart from support, is to provide them the exact details of what took place, and that investigation is ongoing. But obviously it brings into sharp contrast the issue of road safety in Bermuda. And whilst the incident with Amber on Sunday appears to be a tragic accident, there are matters in Bermuda where people have lost their lives and have been seriously injured through matters of their own behaviour, through speed, through careless and inconsiderate driving. And it's one that concerns us all. And it's one that the Bermuda Police Service plays a key part in addressing. But we are not the only partner within this agenda. It involves many other people, such as the Road Safety Council, government, but most of all the community. And whilst we present many messages in this regard repeatedly, the messages remain the same. So the purpose of today's press conference is to obviously highlight our condolence, the fact that we constantly review our activities and our tactics in dealing with issues. We have a dedicated roads policing unit that are out each day, but also coordinating our other resources to focus on areas where we know there's risk. And we do that through analysis. We understand certain locations are more vulnerable to accidents. And we have seen change in Bermuda where things like traffic calming has taken place and been invested on our roads. And that's one good example of how we can look at the environment and changing people's behaviour. But there are many other things we need to do, and I'll touch on. I'm happy taking questions around things like CCTV, because I know that is a concern and indeed an opportunity that the public see. We've also seen concern this week around motorcycle thefts, and Mr. Cardwell, who I'll introduce in a moment, will touch on the things I've said in a little bit more detail, because his role within our Tactical Operations Department also covers the Roads Policing Unit, and we just want to explain what we're doing around that, because we recognise, particularly at a time of austerity, people rely on two wheels, and when a bike is stolen, it is a big impact on their lives, and it's one that we take very seriously. So I shall now introduce Chief Inspector Cardwell, who will give you an overview to the points that I've just touched on, and then we'll be happy to take questions. Mr. Cardwell.
Thank you, Commissioner, and good afternoon, everybody. The BPS is today responding to recent social media commentary on the subject of motorcycle theft. While we do not police by social media, it is a valuable tool and often assists us in gauging public sentiment, and in fact brings criminals to justice, not to mention holding us to account, something we don't shy away from. The media is very helpful for whether it's positive or negative feedback for us to assess how we're doing. Motorcycle theft for the Bermuda Police Service is a volume crime. Between the 1st of January and the 31st of May 2020, last year, there were 193 reported motorcycle thefts, and 82 of those were recovered. For the same period this year, we've received 195 motorcycle theft complaints, and so far, 55 of those have been recovered. Through the entire period of 2020, the BPS recorded an estimated 40% recovery rate for stolen bikes. In the first 5 months of 2021, the BPS has recorded an estimated 28% recovery. One of the factors affecting recovery numbers is that on some occasions, the motorcycle is recovered by the owner, but the police are not notified. Often, we stop someone on a reported stolen motorcycle only to learn the rider is the owner and the bike has been recovered. It is very important that the police are notified of a recovery so that valuable resources are not wasted. Stealing a motorcycle, particularly the smaller engine-sized motorcycles that we have in Bermuda, is not a complicated or a technical process. If you lock your motorcycle with the handlebars and think it is secure, we advise you it definitely is not. That handlebar lock can be snapped with a sharp tug on the handlebars quite easily, and it only takes seconds to do. Ignitions are easily bypassed. It's not a complicated process to bypass an ignition. And once that ignition is bypassed, the bike can be kickstarted and ridden away. The vast majority of bikes stolen are bikes which were not properly secured. Some, even with the keys left in the ignition or in the lockbox on the back of the bike. We once again advise the public to always use a secondary lock to secure your vehicle. A lock on the wheel is most times all that is required to have a visible deterrent. Secondly, we are aware that GPS technology has come a long way recently, and there are vendors on the island who can install GPS on motorcycles. Oftentimes, when we commence investigations, including into motorcycle theft, we rely on CCTV recordings for evidence, which can be invaluable in the success of catching offenders. In that regard, we ask that should you come into possession of video footage of a crime being committed, it is crucial that the footage is handed over to the police instead of posting it on social media. Whilst posting such video on social media may assist in the recovery of a stolen bike by publicizing the incident, this can at times significantly hamper an investigation and poses challenges in putting files to the DPP for prosecution, particularly around identification issues that we're often challenged with. Motorcycles are stolen for a variety of reasons. In some cases, it is simply for a joyride. More troublingly, on other occasions, stolen bikes are used in the commission of other crimes. Of most recent, stolen motorcycles are used in drive-by shootings, firearms offenses. Bikes are also stolen for parts. We caution the public that if someone is offering cheap parts for sale, be very cautious. Those parts could be stolen, and you could be committing an offense by purchasing them.
What percentage are you aware of that these vehicles, motorcycles and cars with keys are left in the vehicles unsecure? What percentage is that?
I don't have an exact percentage, but it's not infrequent that somebody's left their keys. Usually it's in the lockbox. You know, somebody's going to put their helmet back in the box and forgot to take their keys out when they're leaving it, and that's usually around Hamilton where that happens.
Well, we seen yesterday we got a release from your organization where two females were riding a cycle giving chase. Are we seeing a trend, a change of behavior where females are becoming somewhat gangster style?
No, I mean, that particular case was somewhat unusual because it did involve females. But I can tell you that certainly weekly, perhaps even daily, the police are engaged in pursuing those on stolen bikes and catching offenders. So we do catch them, and we do prosecute them.
Commissioner, I want to ask you about CCTV. I've been made aware that there's a high percentage of the CCTV cameras that are not in work,
Yeah.
not working. Have you lobbied security firms, one or the government, to get these CC cameras throughout the island up and working?
Yeah, I mean, Trevor, it's a good question. The Bermuda enjoys a comprehensive CCTV infrastructure. I think it's about 150 cameras across the island, to which the BPS maintain monitoring of. The cameras are currently going through a program of update. We're reviewing their location and obviously addressing necessary technical improvements and attention that's required. When you take into account the heat of Bermuda, the dryness, and some of the kind of humidity factors, things like wiring, decays, we've had problems in regards to certain cameras not working for some time, and there's an extensive programme that's now being pushed forward, and from the BPS that's been led by Deputy Commissioner Simons, and it's in consultation with the Ministry of National Security, and it's a programme that will take CCTV not just from where it is currently, but to actually a new space. You ask a question directly about the amount of cameras that are not working. Okay, well, it'd be inappropriate of me to say the number of cameras that are not working, the number of cameras that are working, because they're there for crime prevention, and what we need to do is be ahead of those that commit crime. So it would be inappropriate and not in the interest of national security to start saying this camera here doesn't work, that camera here does work, because one of the things that CCTV cameras do, by their very presence, it does put people off from issues of crime, antisocial behaviour. But there are some cameras that are not working at the moment, but the actual response is that we've got a programme to get those fixed, and it's one that's going to take some time. Obviously it requires investment, it's in a difficult period for the country of austerity, so we need to be very mindful of it. The other point I raised, which was covered in the Royal Gazette, and it was some comments I made the other day, is we need to think, I think, slightly more strategic in regards to what we do in relation to CCTV. There are opportunities to add additional software, and going back to the issues around road safety, monitoring people's speed, and not necessarily at a given point, but monitoring their average speed across the island. So if they cross one CCTV camera, say for instance in the town centre, and they hit another one in Padgett, you can determine by the time between the average speed that that rider or driver has taken, and therefore we can then obviously look at enforcement. That takes me back to the point that I was raising at the beginning. How do we address the issue of road safety in Bermuda? And I think I rely on something that's known as the 3 E's. Firstly is education. So we communicate with the public to take self-responsibility. So that's not taking away the role of the police. And indeed, as Chief Inspector Cardwell's just said, we're asking the public to take care of their property. Personal responsibility. So we want to educate, inform, and get people to work with us. The second part is the environment. So understanding the environment of our roads, risk areas, places where we can invest in partnership with government, so traffic calming and indeed CCTV. And then the final part is enforcement. And we do have our roads policing unit, we do target people, and we will take action. And whilst the public will always be concerned to this, I'm very grateful to the things that they send us through. Whilst we need to be mindful of certain video that's published, when we get videos of somebody driving poorly, we've had ones with bikes pulling wheelies, we've been able to find the rider and we've been able to take action. So this is, the policing is not solely about the BPS, it's about all of us working together within certain rules. So what I don't want is a situation where it's their fault, it's somebody else's fault. This is an issue for Bermuda, because if we go back to the situation with Amber, who lost her life, God forbid, we need to start preventing that happening from somebody else, and we need to work together on that subject.
My last question. We know from statistics that this curfew has curtailed accidents on the roads. We're coming out of the curfew, and by June the 26th, we should be completely free. Not sure with the curfew. Are you going to have added officers on the road during night hours because
actually, it's a really good point to raise, Trevor, because it actually ties into another question I was asked. I mean, we did see some concerning driving and riding, certainly in periods just close to the curfew. I think on some nights it was like Formula One. And thankfully, and I think it's probably more through luck, we didn't see any serious injuries, but some behaviour was very poor, people leaving it very late. One of the questions I've been asked is around roadside sobriety. Why haven't we seen many roadside sobriety tests? Because alcohol is also a factor in regards to serious injury collisions. When in actual fact the curfew has benefited us significantly, almost as a roadside sobriety, and actually in far more extent, because we've had curfew checks moving across the island. Indeed, we have stopped people that have been over the limit in regards to alcohol, and we've taken action. The other additional thing is that when we run a roadside sobriety check, it normally takes anything up to about 14 to 16 officers to run, because you've got people who do the stop and there's a safety aspect, there's people who record the stop, so note takers, and then you've got officers primarily on motorcycles that will, if somebody fails to stop, they obviously go off because there's a massive public safety need around it. So as we see the curfew beginning to be alleviated as we move forward, then we will see roadside sobriety checks come in, and also we will see a continuance of the nighttime activity. And indeed the roads policing unit, again following data, have shifted their hours to target hours of darkness and other key aspects of the day. So you're spot on with your questions. The BPS is alive to it, and of course we've got to be agile with the resources that we've got to be able to meet some of the risks.
Commissioner, what percentage of the cameras would you say are not working? Is it more than 50%?
I'm not. I mean, this is. I'm not being deliberate, but this is where it gets into a sort of kind of guessing game, and then it becomes an issue. And I am not at a point of concern, because I know that we've got a programme to take things forward. And actually, I welcome and I'm pleased with the government's support, because the investment in our CCTV infrastructure is much needed. As I've said, some of the environmental factors have impacted the cameras, but I'm not going to answer percentages or how many.
Is it a national security budget or police budget?
Well, it falls under, I mean, the CCTV infrastructure falls under the remit of control by the BPS, and we manage the contract. But it also obviously falls under national security issues, whether it be from crime prevention and other risks. But we have got a programme to address the work going forward.
And you said it will take some time. Are you mean like the next budget, or maybe a couple of budgets?
The programme's going now. It's not one that...
It'll be taking some time to, get it back to where you want it.
I know the answers you want, but for matters of, as I've already described, touched on with Trevor, I'm not going to disclose the details, other than the fact that we've got a programme of work that is ongoing. And indeed, the Minister is fully aware. We're very collaborative in how we work in going forward, and I'm confident that the necessary attention is being done and will progress as soon as we can.
You responded on Madge's list to some remarks about bike theft. That was my initial question yesterday morning, which you obviously didn't get. But the thing is that you seem to indicate that you would move the issues that existed in that string of conversation along.
I mean, I think most people know that I do tend to get stuck into social media, because for me, social media is no different than a town hall of people talking, and people have different views. And the police's role is to serve the community, and if we're not listening to what the community say, then we're not serving. And there were some issues that came up, and actually some really good comments that were being made. But there was also some things where perhaps our service wasn't as effective as it could be. So, for example, if somebody reports a bike to us and that bike's disappeared, there's a lot of things we do. So we record, obviously, details that it's on our police system, so we can do checks. But quite often people's experience of the BPS is at the point of their first contact. So perhaps getting across in a more consistent fashion the kind of messages that getting away from any impression that suggests that the person should go and investigate it themselves. And there were some quite key experiences which I find regrettable, and whilst people may not have intended that, it's how people perceive it. And I mean, I want the BPS to be a learning organisation, and where perhaps we've given the wrong impression to one member of the public and they express it in a public forum, we shouldn't be ignoring it. We should do something about it. And indeed, it was healthy the other day. We had a big debate about what are we doing around motorcycle thefts. So that's everything from how we manage victims from the point of first contact, how do we record the crime, what are the early investigative opportunities, how we targeting, as Mr. Cardwell highlighted, those second-hand outlets that are selling parts. And we need to be alive to the fact that the austerity agenda sometimes drives crime. So if you take a bike and you break it up and you get a few $100s for it very quickly, that's an issue we need to be mindful. Is that driving some of the thefts? Where are those going to? So there's big intelligence work that we need to do. But social media is one that I think gives us a reflection of what people are talking about. And from the BPS's perspective, we need to be alive and respond to it as well.
That video that was on that same stream, was that of any help?
Yeah, of course it was help, but I think as the point Mr. Cardwell said, and it's often an issue that's raised by the community, like why don't you publish the video? Why don't you show who this person is? And of course at the end of the day, yes, we want to get people's property back, but equally we want to hold somebody to account. And we work closely with the Director of Public Prosecutions, and there are rules of law. And you can prejudice a case if you, show a video and the world and his wife start saying it's this person, it's that person, and then later on somebody may be involved in that process. And also there is a fairness issue as well, because while somebody may possess a video that captures somebody, they may not actually have been committing an offence. Yeah. And if somebody says, well, that's Trevor Lindsay on there and he's loitering around that bike, and Mr. Lindsay, as we well know, was probably looking for a story. It's those things that unfairly think. So it's about managing everything from the evidence to matters of privacy, but also having integrity in the investigation.
But the other question here is, was there a bike stolen from that location?
From that location, that inquiry is ongoing. From what I understand is we've contacted the lady, we're making inquiries. I've seen the video myself, but I don't know any more details in that regard, but we can find that out and let you know.
The other question I had was, you mentioned the figures 193, 195 year by year. Have these numbers ever really deviated much?
When we look at the year-over-year trends, they're going down. They are going in a downward trend, although the period this year compared to the period last year, we've had 2 more stolen bikes than we did last year. I just want to recap something that the Commissioner went over there, and certainly in light of the social media that we got regarding stolen bikes, we took that to heart. We have had several meetings this week to have a look at our operational strategies around our response to motorcycle theft complaints, and we are in the midst of reviewing those strategies to implement new processes so that we can better support the public.
Can I ask a question about, you speak about social media, and the German watch is a valuable tool for members of the public, and I'm sure for you. I just want to know your thoughts on this German watch, because if a bike gets stolen, generally it goes up on German watch very fast. Does this assist or hinder the BPS?
You're telling me something new about German watch. I haven't heard of that one before. But just the publication of some CCTV footage or a Ring doorbell footage of a suspect or a culprit, it works against us. It doesn't help us at all. It makes our job a lot harder to put cases before the courts. A lot of times in these cases, identification of the offender is one of the factors that we have to get around to get a case into court. Well, if that identification has already been leaked out, it just works against us because it influences so many minds.
I think just the final one that Mr. Cardwell said, and again, it's not pushing it back, but if you're going to buy a bike for, some people buy used, some people buy new, but maybe anything up to a $3,000 or $4,000 piece of property, yeah. I've got a bike. I went on Amazon and I bought a $50 GPS thing, and I just put it in the bike. And I hope the bike's not stolen, but it's just something little that I've done in regards to trying to do it. And whilst we're not pushing it onto the public, work with us, try and secure your bike, give us every opportunity to recover it. And obviously our role is your bike, but also getting those held to account. Because one thing we can say, the majority of crime is committed actually by a small amount of people. So the person that has stolen somebody's bike is the person that's stolen several other bikes. So it's actually really important that we catch them, because then we can actually prevent multiple more offences taking place. And it also goes right the way back to a beginning, and a thing that we've said consistently is stop the silence. If you know somebody that's stealing bikes, and we've had cases before where we've had tip-offs and we've gone to houses and we've found 8 bikes in the garage. If you know somebody that's regularly stealing bikes, if you know an outlet that's taking bikes in and breaking them up, phone up. Don't say who you are, just say go and check this place out or go and check this location out. We'll pick it up. It's about us working together as one big policing community.
Any other questions on the media?
And we like to do these things live as opposed to just sending the questions. That way our messages are not misconstrued. Thank you very much, members of the media, for attending. Any other questions, you can be sure to email them to me. Thanks.